We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
that's complicated.
In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. And this week on today's show, I actually got this streaming software to work correctly with the autoplay of the introduction coming into my video here. So that's good. One thing worked better this week. So if we can get better every single week, eventually, I don't know what happens. What happens eventually? You make it, whatever that means. But great to have you back this week. If you're watching live on Thursday night, as I'm streaming late Thursday on the East Coast, it is 10:07 p.m. Thanks for tuning in. We're streaming on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and also Facebook. If you're actually watching on Facebook, tell me, because I don't believe you. We're going to get to introducing my guest in just a minute here. Before I do that, I just want to ask everyone, wherever you are watching, or if you're listening on Monday when this posts to the podcast feeds, please subscribe to the show. And if you've already done that, well, subscribe if you like the show. If you don't like the show, go listen to something else. If you like the show, subscribe. And if this is your second, third, 100th time back, and you haven't left us a 5-star review and or a 5-star rating and a nice review on the podcast apps, please go ahead and do that. It helps out. It's appreciated. And it's going to get this show to more ears and eyeballs. All right. So let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Harkos. And
Hey.
Harkos is a marketing manager, a hip-hop artist. He helps to really give musicians of all genres, if I could say that word, he helps them to grow, helps them to develop their brand, their social media presence, content creation, all of that stuff. He also hosts a podcast called Makin Cents. Harkos, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. Definitely appreciate the opportunity. And what you were saying at the beginning about, you got one more thing to work this week. So, just try to get that one more thing. I like to say it's a chess game of inches.
Mm-hmm.
That's how life is. And so as long as you're trying every single day to try to just get that one more thing, and that's what I'm all about is every day, literally, I'm just working and grinding to try to get my personal freedom, and I'm trying to do it by helping other people achieve theirs. Because I heard what was your previous co-host with the long hair? Mark Claire. Yeah, he said that on Jason Stapleton's podcast when he was on a few years ago. Whenever he got laid off from the sports gig or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Jason's podcast, and I heard him say that, and that's what really triggered me. I'm like, okay, let me get this going. And so that's when I really shifted gears and started focusing a lot on building up my knowledge and my skills a lot more, and then shifting to building up what I'm launching and still building right now with Makin Cents Podcast and everything I do to help musicians, like you said, of all genres, find their independent freedom.
Yeah, man. Dude, I'm glad you brought that up. Just one more thing, get better every day. And the place where I met you was with the Weathered Soul Gang.
Yep.
You and Ken and Jason and Bruce. And I like that group because you all have a similar mindset, entrepreneurial focused. And, as we've talked about, on that show when I was on with you guys, my new entrepreneurial ventures, this direction in life. And it's crazy. It's crazy what you can accomplish when you do just focus on that one more thing. This is what I have to do today. This is what I have to do tomorrow. And you just keep going. And you look back in 3 weeks Like for me this week, all of a sudden, I'm meeting a landlord for a shopping center about putting an ice machine in place there.
There
And
you go.
it's like, how did I get here? What happened? Like it's crazy, man. Crazy.
One step at a time. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
like I got this. This is my list. It looks like a crazy person's manifesto, but I mean, it kind of is because I am a little off. But this is just my list of things that I need to do, and I started writing these things down instead of trying to keep it all in my head all the time because it would just kind of sit there and just spin in my
Mhm.
head, you know, because I mean, you're like, okay, I,
Oh yeah.
I have this big grand vision of, you know, whatever it is, and everybody has their own vision. And then there's all the different pieces you got to put in place. There's short term, medium term, long term, you know, it's the whole goals thing, right? But there's also all these pieces. It's that chess game of inches. So instead of trying to think of all the moves at once, you write them all down. And so, like this week, you know, I had a couple podcasts that I had to edit for some of my clients that I edit podcasts for. And then I had some other things for my personal podcast that I wanted to get accomplished. And then I had some other things in here about, you know, adjusting my website and building out some funnels and stuff like that for some of the new projects I'm working on implementing and putting together and everything like that as well too. And so it just, you know, having a list, like even though this isn't something I need to accomplish today, this is stuff I would like to get done this week. I've gotten a decent amount of it done. Actually, I need to scratch one more thing off now that I'm looking at it. But
It always feels good to scratch something
yeah,
off. Put that check mark there.
yeah. Well, because I just got one podcast edited today, so I got some more stuff. But yeah, so I mean, some of that I'm probably not even going to be able to get finished until next week. I'm going to be adding some more to it by the time
Mhm.
next week comes and stuff. But, you know, that's where I see a lot of people get overwhelmed because I've personally been there as well. When you see the mountain in front of you that you got to climb and you're like, man, I don't even have a backpack yet, you know, then you're sitting there and you're just like, well, you kind of get overwhelmed. But like you said, that one step at a time, you know, and I've been taking my one step at a time for a few years now. And I know you have as well too, you know, and this your ice machine venture is just one step into that because you got the Plexus thing, you got the,
Mhm.
if I remember right, you had something with real estate as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dive
So
into real estate also.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you got that stuff as well. And so you just you know, one step at a time, because there was a time when you didn't have any of those.
Exactly,
You
man.
didn't even have the urge for any of those, maybe. You know, just like whenever I got out of the military in 2008, I was like, I want to own my own business. And I had a couple different ideas, but my one big idea that I still have, I still want to get to, is owning a greenhouse complex with, you know, multiple big greenhouses or whatever, like one big greenhouse, and it's an aquaponics system set up.
Hmm.
So you familiar with aquaponics?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are listening or not, it's where you use hydroponics to grow plants, but then you filter that through your aquaculture, which is the raising of fish. And so you use the fish waste to water the plants and fertilize the plants and yada yada, symbiosis, right? Well, I want to have a complex like that also has a storefront, so you can get the most fresh, the most beyond organic food possible right there in your town. Obviously, it's gonna have to be on like the edge a little bit. You know, it can't be downtown because it's gonna take some space. But you know, it's gonna be like right there. You can come out there, you can get it. Probably, obviously, by the time I get set up, I'm gonna be able to have robotic delivery and stuff too, right? Drones or something. But you know, to be able to get it, because you can't use any fertilizers, pesticides, nothing like that with an aquaponic system, because
Mhm.
something that'll kill some bugs will also hurt the fish, stuff like that. So you have to do
Right.
complete 100%, like, oh, here, let me use some cinnamon oil to get these spiders away or something. Like, well, you need spiders, but you know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that. You can't, you got to be very, very careful, even what essential oils you use that could be polluting the fish as well, too. And so when it comes to a health perspective, like, you know, Whole Foods Who is essentially kind of what, but that was my dream then, but that takes a lot. And so over the years, I've had to, you know, I tried getting a business degree because I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, you know, I need to learn about business. Well, now as I was going through that, and I was like, okay, well, let me try getting into working in management in businesses as well too, because I already had management experience in the military. But then they didn't want to, you know, civilian people don't want to recognize a lot of the military stuff, which is nuts because, you know, that's not on the recruitment campaigns, right? Get skills to transfer
They don't tell you that when they're signing you up.
No,
right?
when they're signing you up, they say, hey, you'll gain skills that'll translate into the civilian world afterwards. And they translate to middle fingers is essentially what they translate to. Because I mean, the story I always like to tell is October 1st, 2008, the best time to get out of the military, right? Because that's when everything hit the fan. That's when I get out of the military. Hooray for me. That's chalk that up to another great life choice, right? And so, I get out. I'm unemployed for 5 months, except for my dad had a roofing business at that time still. And so he had a few jobs that went over until like October and a little bit in November. And then that was done pretty much until like March. Well, I didn't end up getting a job. My first job out of the military was at a gas station, working third shift, making minimum wage. And at that time, it was $5.50 still here in Indiana, right? And so I'm still living in my dad's house, getting fresh out of the military, stuff like that. Go from there to Arby's, where I was not a manager, right? And then end up going working factory, stuff like that. End up finally working at a Caterpillar plant. And I was making like $14.25 an hour, which back when minimum wage was still $6.25 or something like that. That was great, right? You're making double minimum wage. That's amazing. And it was before all the inflation. I'm talking about 2011 here. Well,
that went a lot farther back then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it went a lot farther, and then, obviously I didn't have kids then and stuff like that. So it worked a lot better, but so then I tried to get into the entry-level management program at Family Video. So this is a video store, right?
I remember. I remember a Family
Video.
Yeah.
I mean, they were kind of a regional thing around the Midwest. I don't know how far they got out to, the West Coast or nothing like that. But I remember I went in there, and of course, they don't have any office. Their office is like the desk right up there. And so when you have an interview at a Family Video, they don't exist anymore. But when you did, it would be like in the middle of the floor. Like you'd have racks of DVDs right around you. People would be like, grabbing DVDs, and you just be right there sitting in chairs on the floor. You weren't even behind the desk, right? You're just like in the walkway. It'd be like having an interview at a Walmart in the cashier lane, essentially. Right. Okay. And like, you're just sitting down in chairs. You're not even standing up. And I remember I was sitting there, doing the interview and everything, and, dressed up halfway nice, stuff like that. And on my resume, I got, they're like, any experience. I'm like, oh yeah, I was, I got early promotion 3 times in the military. I got, an accommodation award for, exceptional leadership skills above and beyond. I was doing a job of like an E7, which is a sergeant first class, as an E4, right? And so that was like an 8-year gap in between like where you're supposed to be and where I was doing. And I was essentially working 8 years ahead, got an award for that, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I put that all in there, and they're like, oh, okay, so tell us about your, your management experience and stuff. So I'm telling them about my stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, well, do you have any real management experience? And I was like, I didn't think I heard him right, because, TV's playing movies and people walking around and stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me? And she's like, do you have any real management experience?
Real.
And I said, because at first I thought she said retail, right? And she's like, real management. I said, real? And she's like, yeah. I was like, go fuck yourself. And I got up and walked out. And that's when I realized I got to pave my own way. And I got to figure everything out on my own. I can't rely on anything else. And so I've been grinding ever since. This was like 2011. And, but yeah, like really in 2016, once I found the Jason Stapleton program back whenever
I was gonna say, I can see why you identified so much with Jason Stapleton, because his story is so similar to yours.
It's very, very similar. Yeah. And that's how real veterans are treated. If you spend 20 years in and you lick all the boots and suck all the assholes, you get out and you're fine. You're working for DOD. You're working for, you're working for private contractors, making a couple $100,000 a year. You're doing great. But if you just do one term like me and Jason did, you're pretty much kicked to the curb, especially if you didn't get high level in there. Like me and him, we didn't get too high level, right? I mean, he got a little bit higher level than me, but he was a door kicker essentially. I mean, high level. He's special forces, so I'm really downgrading it. but I was just a mechanic in the Army that never did any mechanics in the Army. I did like 5 months worth of mechanics in the whole 3.5 years I was in. Because the rest of the time I was during the wars. I was doing war stuff. And yeah, they really kick you to the curb and stuff like that. And so that's why a lot of people have a lot of issues. But yeah, once I found him, I really resonated with his winners win story, like with all that kind of stuff. But that's when I really started, everything started clicking finally. That I was like, because I was just searching from 2008 all the way to 2016, like 8 years, just searching mindlessly, wandering and stuff, trying to figure it out. And in 2016, finally, the internet finally started getting to a place where I could actually do something, and it made it so cheap, essentially free.
Mm-hmm.
So, then that's why I started my first podcast in 2017, and then started just going down my journey and learning about LLCs, learning about marketing, all that stuff from 2017 till now. And with the help of Jason, because I do work one-on-one with him in his private mentorship program, but even before I joined that a few months ago, like all the free stuff from him, other people from other industries as well too. You really got to go at it and get it on your own. And so, that kind of brings me to like my story with my podcast, Makin Cents Podcast, and what I do with, my company that's called Apex Music System that runs everything. Is I help independent artists get where they need to go with the different skills that I have, but also with the mentality shift of the planning and of just keeping it as simple as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had to build my company with no money. I mean, I've never made over $50,000 a year in my life.
Yeah.
Right. Even as a 38-year-old man right now, right. I'm barely creeping up right on that right now. And so and I'm looking to double it, obviously, but, so I know exactly what it's like to be making $30,000 a year and trying to be like, well, yeah, I might be able to run $30 worth of promotion on this, or I might be able, spend this, I mean, I had to get payment plan for my $700 computer that we're on right now, so I can relate to a lot of these struggling artists. And I'm saying, hey, look, stop just living in that starving artist mentality. Start actually working your way out of it. You want to live the musician lifestyle, right? Where you're not working this bullshit 9-to-5 job or these multiple bullshit part-time jobs. And you want to spend your time in your life creating music, engaging with your fans, and spending time with your friends and family, right? You don't want to be doing anything else with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, here's the system that I created called the Apex Music System that helps you build everything, put it all together for as low cost as possible until you scale. And then you can start reinvesting and double up. And so that's like everything that I do leads to that, to help these artists out as well too. And I use a lot of the same systems to build my stuff. Like I'm just now to the point after a little over a year of having the podcast to where I'm actually investing in promotions and advertising and stuff like that on my channels in order to really add that gas to the fire, because I've actually built everything. And that's one thing I see a lot of artists do as well too, is they'll try throwing money at stuff too early, and then they'll wonder why it doesn't work. I don't know how many artists, you'll probably laugh at this, I've heard a lot of artists say paid advertising doesn't work. I'm like, excuse me, I'm sorry. Have you ever seen any of your favorite artists on a show of any kind?
I mean, you can definitely waste money in paid advertising if you do it wrong.
But they say it's a scam, it's a waste of money, it's like all this stuff, I'm like, hold on. And so like legitimately, sometimes I'll be like, I'll message these people. Like I did it a few months ago, right? I messaged some guy who, like, I posted a reel or something like that. Like I reshared a reel, and it was talking about, you got to have, some paid advertising, blah, 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 right? After you get the organic and everything set up first, right? You gotta be able to create content on a regular basis before you start adding any fuel to that fire, right? You got to build your car before you can put gas in and start driving. And he was like, oh man, paid advertising, that doesn't work. That's a scam. I've wasted money on that before. So I messaged him privately, right? I didn't want to do it all on the Facebook and stuff. And I was like, hey man, tell me about, you said you wasted money. Like, let me know about your last thing. He's like, oh man, I just tried doing this like a month ago, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your audience set up as? He goes, what do you mean? I'm like, Okay, I know where we're going here, right?
Yeah,
And so-
you gotta ask, you start asking questions. You know,
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
has something that didn't work. Okay, let's dig in.
Let's
What
dig
happened?
in, right?
Let's-
Yeah, like I'm saying, like I've been working. I
Yeah.
went to vocational school for mechanics in high school. You know, my junior and senior year, and I've
Mhm.
done mechanics. I'm a problem solver, right? And so like I'm like okay, well, and so then I led him to figuring out how to find that, and he's like, oh yeah, right here it is, right? And he showed me it, and his audience had this and only this for his audience identifiers, right? Males 18 to 65 in Idaho. That's it.
That's
And
a
I
hot
said-
That's a hot market in
And
Idaho.
I
man.
well, he lives in Idaho. So I'm
Okay,
like,
okay.
I'm like, okay, I understand that. But you didn't signify any artists that you were like. You didn't even
Mhm.
signify a genre of music. You didn't even signify music. Okay. And so like, and this dude has like a kind of a niche subgenre within hip hop. Okay. And so I'm like, for one, you need to target the whole United States, and you don't need to be going over 40 years old, because anybody over 40 years old, you're going to have some people that will like that style because it's popularized by some other artists who have been in the game for about
Mhm.
20-ish years. But like, you definitely don't want to be targeting 65-year-olds. It's going to be very, very rare to find artists who do what's called speed rap, right? Which is where they rap really, really fast. And I'm like, you're gonna maybe have 45, 50-ish year olds, because there's you know, speed rap was a big thing, you know, back in like the 80s, 90s, and it's been a big thing for a long time. I mean, there's a lot of very prominent people who've done speed rap, between Bone Thugs and Harmony, Twista,
Yeah.
Tech Nine, stuff like that, right? Busta Rhymes. So it's very popular. It's been popular since like the 80s, off and on, but it's a very small section of the overall hip hop listening audience.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, okay, so, and then also I was like, look, you need like, who's 10 of the people that you're closest to, right? And so he named me like 5 or 6. I threw in a couple other ones. I'm like, okay, here's nickel's worth of free advice. Take all this shit that I just told you, change your audience, put $20 on it over the next week, right? Nothing crazy, do it. And then a few days later or whatever, I messaged him. I was like, hey man, how's that ad going? He's like, bro, it's working like a charm. I'm like, I thought it was a scam.
Yeah.
See, the problem is that when you're ignorant, when you have no knowledge,
Exactly.
everything's a scam to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but once you actually have the knowledge, you figure out what really is a scam and what is not a scam. You know, and that's a lot of the kind of things that I try to focus on to help artists, because even though a lot of these entry level artists like that guy
Mm-hmm.
don't have a lot of money to where they can even really pay me anything, I still like to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I have the podcast, and that's why I'm developing some other entry-level programs to kind of give people the basis to where when they don't have much, they can at least try to do something. They can get some knowledge off me, bare minimum, for free 99 over on YouTube, or they can, you know, hop in my new program called Takeover Tuesdays, which is like open office hours every Tuesday for like 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
where they can come in, we can discuss whatever you need help on, or whatever, you know, marketing consultation right there. But then there's also going to be other people as the program grows that will come in during that time frame, and you'll be able to learn off of each other, maybe even collaborate, stuff like that. But that's every single Tuesday, and it's $50 a month. I mean, that's basically free.
That's
You,
it.
you know, I mean, when it comes to consultations, you know,
Yeah.
and so you know, just small things like that. You know, like I figured out how to.
Hold. I do.
Yeah,
I do want
sorry,
to back
sorry.
you up for a minute. I don't want to forget this, because you
Yeah.
said this about 10 minutes ago, probably.
Uh-huh.
But I want to bring it up again, because
Sorry,
people might
I
have
can just go. I have a
Well,
solo podcast.
that's why-
I can just go.
That's why for this show, like, I don't normally like write down a lot of questions I'm going to ask. I normally let it flow, but
Right.
literally today, like, I wrote down almost nothing, because I'm like, I know we'll just talk, and
Right.
it won't be a problem.
Yeah, there's
But
no problem
but
with me talking.
I did want to come back to this, because I think it's really powerful.
Okay.
When you were talking about, you know, how much money you're making, and, you know, people might look at you and think that, you know, you're not, you know, really successful in what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, other artists who you're working with, you know, have, you know, even less success than that. They're, you know, but what I see for example, with my Plexus work in network marketing, is that a lot of people will say, well, I'm not making money yet. How can I talk to other people, about how to, operate this business and generate leads and talk to people. If I'm not successful yet, how can I do that? And it's like, well, that's how you become successful. You have to start somewhere. You have to start building somewhere. And I thought that was just so awesome that you highlighted that you're so aware of that, your self-awareness, that you're recognizing that you're building that right now. So I just wanted to double down on that and really highlight that for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I honestly, like, this is not like the Jason Stapleton award ceremony, but I literally, like, I kind of, it clicked on me one day whenever I heard him say to the effect of, not exactly, to the effect of, you may not know everything, but you know more than a lot of people. And those are the people you can start helping on your way.
Yeah.
To knowing everything. And he's had a lot of other things, but like, that's what really, really got me. And so I'm like, okay. And so anytime people say, because people do say that a lot to me, they'll be like, oh, well, why should I listen to you, man? You don't really have a big audience and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, how did you find out about me?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause I'm not just sitting in my, technically I'm in my closet right now. I'm just not sitting in my closet yelling at the walls, right? You were able to find me and you don't even live in my state. Or even country sometimes. I do have people that I talk with over in the UK and other places. And it's like, look, you found me because I'm putting together all the things, and you found me organically as well too, through either networking, referrals, or just from the algorithm. So I know how to do these things and I'm doing it. And the thing is, though, is that, like, I could give all the excuses in the world, but you look at this, I really, really started this whole brand of Makin Cents Podcast in August of 2023. And so, I've been doing it 100% organic until September of 2024. And I finally been putting some like ad money into it. So everything I've been doing for the last year has just been building, testing and everything like that. And that's exactly how artists need to do it as well too. You got to start out putting the base in. And this with anything, any business, honestly, you got to start putting the base in, and you have to, it's imposter syndrome's a motherfucker. It's hard to get over.
Oh, yeah.
I have that all the time because I'm sitting here. Anytime somebody says that to me, I ask myself that. I'm like, well, that is a good point. Like, how am I going to tell these people that they can start making money off their music when I'm an artist as well too? I'm not making money off my music. Well, then I always go back to, well, yeah, but I haven't actually released anything or even promoted it in over a year, right? Because I just like pause that, focus on this. I'll get back to that later. Is basically how I done it and stuff. But like, everything that I've learned is a lot of stuff that other people don't know. And so that's the self-awareness I go off of to get it pushing on my own, And so
the other thing is, like, you were talking about giving things away for free, and people might hear that and say, well, that's stupid. How can you give stuff away for free? And I mean, number one, I think it's just good to help people. I think a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurs, who don't, operate, self-employed in this environment, they think that you have to be like cutthroat in order to make it. And it's the opposite, man. It's when you get like on the corporate side, like that's the cutthroat, like bullshit artist. But when you get in small business and, people, just trying to make it, people, it's just making friends with people and helping each other, and then figuring out a way to make money together. That's
absolutely
at the basis. That's what entrepreneurship is.
Absolutely. And you can do that in all different kinds of ways. But, to what you said about the corporate structure being cutthroat, well, that's how it's built. It's built like that to churn out a specific type of person. But like you said, out here in the independent entrepreneurial world, it's, there's like the slang term. It's not your net worth is determined by your network. Right. And so, who can help. And along the way, who may just be somebody else who has a podcast with a couple hundred listeners as well too, or even a dozen listeners, right? that may be somebody because one of their listeners happens to know, like for instance, with me here recently, right? I I became friends and network with another podcast who does like a music review show every Friday. I ended up starting my own here Wednesday as well too, with the help of them, giving me the insight with technology and stuff. But by me going on his show, a couple Fridays a month, sometimes a little bit more, and just hanging out and just being me and everything like that, just hanging out, then people got to know me on his channel that honestly during the live stream gets like 10 to 15 people at one time listening, watching the live stream.
Yeah.
And one of the people on there, he was like, oh, hey, yeah, blah, blah, blah. He's saying something in the comments. And I was like, man, all the, like, he kept like referring different artists, play this artist music, play this artist music. I'm like, do you know these guys? Because like they were all like kind of like lower tier artists and stuff. He's like, oh yeah, I know these guys. I'm like, man, you sent them my way. And then he was like, yeah, let me message you on Instagram. I'm like, okay. And so he messaged me, and like I got 4 interviews booked with some of these artists coming up here soon. And one of which is possibly going to lead to start being at least a small time client, if not something bigger. And so like, just off of that, I just gained a few more people that I just got in my live stream the other day as well too. And so it builds. And like you said at the beginning, it's that one more thing, that one connection I just made right there has gotten me so far about 5 new connections. And
which is wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And the 10% rule, maybe one of them will actually accumulate to something substantial in the short term. In the long term, I could get 2 or 3 of them becoming something substantial. It could take a while. I mean, because like from my own personal experience, I try to base everything off my own personal experience to an extent. But, I listened to Jason Stapleton. Like I said, 2016, I started listening to him. I never gave him a single dime until like 2018, 19, something like that. But I listened the whole time. And the first thing I ever did was he started having his newsletter for $5 a month. And that was the first thing I did. Right. And then he developed a Nomad network. And then that was like $20 a month. So I did that. And then if you remember, he like took the pay away from that or whatever. And so then I wasn't paying him anything for a little bit. And then he ended up selling the Master Collection, which was all of his old courses for like I think it was like, what was it? Like $1,000 or something like that. It was kind of a big ticket type of situation, but he had it on payments. And so I went ahead and did that because it was on some payments, So it was, I worked up to that, but I didn't really give him any real money for a couple of years. And so I know most people are going to be like me. And so I just got to give out nickels worth of free advice, as much as possible. But when it comes time for me spending my time and me actually giving you, like, as they say in the hip hop community, like the sauce, right? The meat and potatoes. Hey, that's one of my paid services. All right. You don't want to work for free. I don't want to either. Let's respect each other on that. You can have as much of my free information I put out on YouTube as you want. Anything that you hear on YouTube or my podcast channels, 100% free for you. But anything you want, any 100% custom stuff, you got to draw the line. And like my prices are cheap right now. Okay. So, I build websites for $500 right now, so, I mean, that's nothing essentially in the website building community. Most of them are over $1,000, so I just kind of try to keep my mentality and my self-awareness right there. Like you said, I do try to stay as self-aware as possible. I think that helps me, honestly.
So let's back up to the beginning here for a minute to talk about really how you first really fell in love with music and hip hop and when this started. So, I mean, you talked about your time in the service. So was this prior to that? When did music really come into your life?
So music has always kind of been something in my life. I've always liked listening to music. My dad was part of the Kiss Army, right? For those of y'all who don't know, that means he was a Kiss super fan back in the day. Leather jacket and all that fun shit, right? Even when they came out with comic books, he bought all the comic books. He still got them, all the action figures, all that stuff. But he was always listening to music. My mom was always listening to music. She was more like Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, stuff like that. She's really in love with Bon Jovi. But, they were Gen Xers, you know, so that's to be said, right? And yeah, it was when I really fell in love with hip hop specifically was in 96. You know, I was like 10 years old because I was born in 86. And that's when I was watching MTV before school, like before elementary school. And Bone Thugs and Harmony was on there, and they just got started with their song called The Crossroads, which was like their really, really big first hit. And it was a great song. And I was like, whoa. And it was like something totally different. And then I found Wu-Tang. And then it started going down the rabbit hole from there. And it was all really like edited cassettes and stuff like that because my grandparents were religious and stuff. So, you know, if they let me listen to anything, it was usually on the radio, or, you know, I could get some cassettes, but they had to be edited and stuff like that. And then, of course, like I lived with them because my dad was going through some stuff, but he would like buy me like some of these CDs, like hold on, this one right here. Actually, it's one of the Snoop Dogg ones. He had actually bought me that, and like I had it. I would have it and like other contraband CDs like underneath my shelving unit, like hidden, and I would like sometimes take them out and put them in like underneath the CDs or underneath the booklets or whatever of Christian CDs and stuff, and have them with me. It's like I hiding contraband and stuff. And so that's when I really got into it. In middle school, I started getting into music, like playing it. I started learning the guitar. I took guitar lessons for like a year or two, something like that. And then I played saxophone for like a year in 6th grade for band and stuff. But then like, you know, it didn't really materialize to too much. I was like in a couple of small bands and stuff like that with guitar. But I didn't really like get those very well. But whenever I got into high school, it was around 15-ish, somewhere in there, I started just like writing my own music, like lyrics and stuff like that. And a lot of it started with like me memorizing some of my favorite songs. And so I would write them down and memorize them. And then I started writing my own stuff. And then it just kind of went from there. And whenever I went in the military, I was really wanting to start like actually creating hip hop music and stuff. And as a white dude living in a 99% white town in Indiana, it was very, very rare. Okay. I've been the outcast my whole life.
And this was before Eminem, right?
It was right around whenever he came out.
Yeah.
It was right around when he came out. Cause I went in the military in 2005. And I think he came out right around the beginning of the 2000s. So he was still like the only one. And if anytime I said, oh, I want to rap, people were like, oh, well, you trying to be Eminem? And so like, I have like an instinctive reflex. I hate that guy just because it was always a negative connotation shot back at me. Oh, you trying to be Eminem? Oh, you want to act black? Like all those things. I heard all of them. Right. And, but whenever I'm in the military, I'm like, okay, this might be my chance to actually start doing something. I can go meet people from all over and stuff like that and all that. And so it took a couple years until 2007 when I was in Iraq. You know, some of the people that I was cool with, they knew that I wanted to make music and stuff like that. They knew I liked hip hop and stuff. I like rock as well too. But they knew I wanted to start making hip hop, and they told me, hey, you need to go talk to this guy. He makes hip hop beats. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I didn't know that. So I went and talked to him, you know, me and him sitting talking and hanging out and stuff like that. And I told him, he's like, well, have you ever done it? And I'm like, no, man, I wrote stuff and everything like that for a few years, but I've never actually like put anything out. He's like, okay, you need to go talk to my friend over here. I'm like, okay, cool. So I want to talk to him. And then us three ended up becoming just basically brothers for like the next year and a half. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really first started making music, and I was putting it up on MySpace and stuff like that.
So you were actually making music when you were in Iraq?
Yeah. We were making music in Iraq because we had like laptops, and we didn't really have too much internet, but we were, you know, you download the software onto your computer and then you can record. Yeah. And it was crazy too, because it was like the laptops in 2008 had like a 50 gigabyte hard drive. Okay. So you had to be very, very particular with this. Like you couldn't have too big of files, all that stuff. And external hard drives were the thing. Like we would have like 500 gig hard drives and stuff. But yeah, we would make it. And we lived in these things called CHUs, right? Centralized housing units. And they were essentially shipping containers with doors, like house doors and windows in it, right? And that's what we lived in. Well, it was a big metal box. And so that's not good for recording music. So we figure out a way, right? And that's one of the things I've always loved about hip hop in particular. Hip hop has been something that has always been built something from nothing. Like, for those who don't know, hip hop was started basically by homeless people in New York, just like working with bits and pieces. Like, the first turntables were built from 2 record players put together, and an out of work, unemployed, homeless electrical engineer created the interface and the switcher to switch it back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Like, literally creating something from nothing. Right. And, a lot of like the big pioneers, they were homeless or, living with family and stuff like that, really created something from nothing. And I've always appreciated that. But when we were in Iraq, we had to do the same thing. And so my buddy, his name was Dominic. He was the one who actually like helped me start getting like rapping. And whenever he was recording himself, he would actually have he was just like a stage mic, right? It wasn't even like a condenser mic like this. It was just like a stage mic that they had up on stage. He had one of those, and he would lay it on his bed and then like hang over it, like talk down to his mattress, basically, so the sound would be absorbed in his mattress. Well, whenever I would come over, I'm like, I'm not putting my face near your mattress, bro. Like, no, thank you, right? So I want to rap, but not that bad, right? And so what we did is he would hang some towels over the metal locker and have the microphone hanging down in front of the towel. And so the towel would give a little bit of dampening, but I'm rapping against a metal locker in a metal box. But he was able to figure out with the tuning and stuff like that to get a lot of that tinging out. But yeah, that's when we really started making music. And then when I got back from Iraq, that's when we were able to start like actually putting it on the internet and stuff like that. But we didn't really get anywhere. It was just like we loved doing it, and that's when I really started building it. But then whenever I got out, I didn't make any music for almost 10 years because I came back to Indiana, didn't know anybody. There wasn't really like any kind of scene or nothing. And I didn't really know anybody. I'm pretty introverted, stuff like that. So it really took until I started my first podcast, which was a radio show style podcast, where I was just playing local artists' music on my podcast, right? To give them a platform, because there was no platform locally. And that's what I really created first. I was saying, I want to try to give these local people a platform. I'm learning about this internet shit. Let me try to get it out, because these guys aren't even on YouTube, right, at this time, right, 2017. And so did that, and then it branched out to I was playing Indiana artists and trying to give a limelight for them. And then it got to a point, by the time I stopped in 2021, over 50% of my artists that I was playing were from the UK. And really? So like I had like a lot of artists from the UK, a lot of artists from all over the United States, and just from social media, I was able to build, a few hundred artists that I had in rotation at any one time. And I was doing like 2 shows a week, like a couple like an hour long show usually.
So you would play their music and then bring them on the show to talk about it, or what was the format?
No, I didn't have any of that. I would just play their music, and it was like listening to a radio show where I would say, I had I played a song at the beginning, and then I came in with my intro. And then I would intro the next song. Okay, and this next song is blah, blah, blah from so-and-so, let's check it out. They're from blah, blah, wherever, right? Play the song, come back. All right, yeah, I think that was awesome. That was so-and-so with their song. I would say their song again, and then sometimes if I knew anything about them, because over time I would learn a little bit or whatever, I'd put a little bit of tidbits in there and stuff like that. So it was a promotional outlet for these artists that I was doing. And then as it got closer to 2020, I started having like different rants about political things. And a lot of those episodes have been taken down for medical disinformation. So you can probably guess what I was talking about in 2020.
I just had another one taken down. My interview with Peter McCullough was just taken down this past week. Yeah.
I bet that was. He's on the most banned list. But he's a brilliant guy. Like that guy.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant. I was just listening to his episode with Jimmy Dore here lately, and you had Peter on. That's awesome. But yeah, so like that's kind of what I did then. But yeah, it all really started in Iraq. Is when I first started making real music and kind of getting that bug. And but yeah, so music's always kind of been a thing of mine, and I really try to like look at other people and try to improve myself off of them, even though I still make my own mistakes. And when I say like that is like, I love my parents. But like they fell for a lot of the American dream shit where, oh yeah, you just go work at this factory and you'll be fine. And it didn't work out. My dad, I get a lot of my rebellious gene from him because he ended up saying fuck the system and everything like that and started his own roofing business, which was great. But then he didn't really put a lot of the pieces in place to where whenever he was physically unable to do it anymore, he could continue the business. And whenever he had to physically bow out and go on disability from the government, I really didn't want to run the business, you know, and stuff like that. And so he had to shut it down and everything like that. And I really wasn't ready to run a business or anything like that at that time either. But, you know, I look at that and then that's what really motivates me is, you know, it's kind of like demented to say, but I'm like, look, I watched my grandpa die because he was living at my dad's house with me during high school. I watched my grandpa die on disability fighting cancer.
Wow.
Because he didn't have anything set up and he did a lot of different mistakes, you know, severe alcoholism, you know, life choices. He lived a great life, but a rough one. And then, you know, now I'm seeing my dad essentially on disability as well too. And he's like, I think he's just now turning 60. Right. And so I'm like, I don't want to be there. You know, I love them, but I don't want to do that path, you know? And so I'm like, I've made a lot of mistakes. I feel like I wasted my 20s, but I'm getting to a point now, 38. Sometimes, you know, I feel a lot of times like I've missed the boat, but at the same time, I'm like, look, the boat, I just found the boat. Like I couldn't do anything that I'm doing right now. Even this, we couldn't have done this in 2008.
No.
You know, when I got out of the military, I could like my whole business structure had to be built at this time. I couldn't have done it any other time.
Exactly, man. And it's not because I've had the same thoughts. And you think back to, you know, I worked in corporate America for 16 years.
Right.
But it's not those years, even though it's not directly, you know, applicable to what I'm doing now, a lot of it, it's still like the skills, being able to relate to people, being able to communicate, being able to set a schedule. A lot of stuff does, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to do this 10 years ago. And it's not only that I wasn't ready from maybe a skill standpoint or I wasn't ready just from a mentality standpoint. I didn't have the drive, right?
Yeah, you gotta have that
in entrepreneurship, it's going to lead into my next question. I'm not just rambling.
That's fine.
In entrepreneurship, man, you have to have drive because for years I've had side gigs with varying degrees of success. Some totally fizzled out and didn't work at all. But if you don't have something that is forcing you, if you don't have something like in real estate, you know, one thing I'm doing right now, a part of it is a lot of cold calling. If you don't have drive to light that fire in you, you're just going to sit in your ass and not do it. So it's everything has to line up in order for things to work out. So missing the boat, it's really the boat just arriving when it needs to be there for you to get on it.
Absolutely.
But I do want to ask you about entrepreneurship. I think Ken and I talked about this last week. So we were talking about the idea that, do you believe that people like have an entrepreneurial gene that either maybe right away when they're 20 it comes out, or maybe it takes some time to develop? Do you think that anyone can become an entrepreneur, or does that like gene really need to be in the, you know, the individual?
I think everyone probably has the gene, but just like, you know, it has to be unlocked. And some people don't have it unlocked. It's a mind state. It's not necessarily like, oh, well, my dad owned a business, so I'm going to be great at it too. You know, I mean, he was decently successful. He built a solid business. People didn't have to have their roofs re-roofed in his whole town for quite a while. So he did well, but no, I think it has to be unlocked, and that mentality has to be there. You have to essentially, for lack of better terms, you have to hit the point of fuck it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and so with me, I hit that point. 2020 was I hit a lot of points of fuck it. For a lot of different reasons, and I won't go too far because I can just talk for hours. But between 2020, 2021, and even until 2023, I've hit multiple points of fuck it, to the point where now I'm just almost all in. I still try to manage myself to where I'm not fully just diving in 100% and being reckless. But when it comes to your question, I think a lot of people have been too conditioned to play it safe.
Yes.
And to work and to be within the system, stay with the system. Hey, go to college, get that good job, get that pension, whatever, right? But then I'm a millennial. A lot of people in my generation have been screwed by that system. And a lot more people are starting to they're starting to see, and they'll be like, oh, this whole system is a bag of lies, right? And then now my kids, they're 16, they're Gen Zers and stuff. And like, they're sitting here, they're juniors in high school, and they're looking at, the next couple of years. They're like, I feel like the fucking world is fucked. And I'm like, yeah, right. But I think that a lot of people, they play it safe so much that when that gene is activated by an outside trigger, like they get laid off from their job, even though they thought they had a super secure job, not meaning to take a jab, but they, some people roll over and just take it. And some people fight back against it. And it's got to be that 10% rule, right? That 10% rule, that 10% of those people, they don't take it. They don't roll over and take it. They don't go get on the unemployment and ride it out for the 99 weeks. They don't even apply for unemployment. They just figure it out.
I have yet to apply.
Exactly.
I don't even know how it works.
It's a pain in the ass. I tried it in 2012. I got laid off from that job at Caterpillar factory. I got laid off. And so I was talking to some of the full-time people that, had been there for quite a while. And because we knew the layoff was coming, and I was one of like the temporary employees, so I was going to get laid off first. And the guy was like, oh yeah, man, whenever I got laid off like 5 years ago or whatever, because they had another big layoff like every election year or whatever. Caterpillar kind of sucks. But he was like, yeah, man, I was getting like $300 a week, and blah, blah, blah. It was okay, right? And I'm like, oh shit. Well, at this time, like I said, I was making $14 an hour. So I'm like, okay, $300 a week. That's me cutting like $150 a week out of my check. I can still live off of that. And I'm going to college. I was going to college online at that time. I'm like, I'm going to college so I can just live on the unemployment for a little while, finish my degree, and then I'll be better after that. Well, then I get laid off because you got to wait until you have no job to file for unemployment. And then you go to file, and they're like, oh, wait, you got to wait 2 weeks before you can file. I'm like, so I got to have $0 for 2 weeks before I can file for unemployment? And so then you go and file, and then it took like another week for them to get it. And so I'm over here just like dying, bleeding out, basically. Like my girlfriend that I had at that time, she was working a minimum wage job. So we were like scraping even in 2012. And then they come back, they're like, oh yeah, you're going to be getting $100 a week. And I'm like, well, this can't work. And so I immediately went and got a job at a landscaping place, because it's the first place I could just like start immediately, like no bullshit. And then like while I was doing that is whenever I had that interview at I had another interview. I gave Family Video a second chance, and they still told me to go fuck myself. So there's that. But they didn't tell me in the same way.
Look at Family Video now.
Exactly.
Look at them now.
If only they would have hired me. They might still be in business.
They could have been Netflix if they hired you.
They could. Yeah. See, that's the thing too, is that remember how everybody shit on Netflix and even Redbox, which doesn't exist anymore now. But
I saw Redbox not too long ago. I don't know if it's just sitting there. But
I don't know. Well, actually, at my kids' work, they work at a grocery store, and they got a Redbox in there that I think is still operational. But it's like people don't do it like they used to. Like they must have some of that dark funding or something like that. They must be doing like some kind of operation to still stay afloat. Because I don't understand. Like everybody has a couple different apps, and bare minimum they just go to Amazon Prime and buy the video or something, rent it or something like that, And so, but yeah, to get to your question, I go off on tangents. Sorry, but I think that everybody has the capability to do it. It's just only 10% of the people, once that trigger hits, are going to actually go forward with it. Like
Yeah.
yourself, you know. I mean, I don't know how much you've told your audience, but you compared to what you've told me and the guys over on Weather Soul. But I mean, you know, you have been working on your entrepreneur stuff, side hustles and stuff like that. But really, once this trigger happened, you decided to say, okay, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
But
it's
and
it's
I
like
think
when
it was at the perfect time, honestly.
yeah. I mean, if life's gonna punch you in the face, and
Always.
when you get punched in the face, do you actually jump back up and ask for another punch in the face, or do you start crawling around and say, "Oh, just let me have another job. I promise.
I promise I'll do it better next time." Yeah,
I'll do better next time. I'll do all the DEI training, whatever you need.
Yeah. So I one of my songs I wrote in like 2019. I remember this line every time. Every time the topic comes up about life punching you in the balls or whatever. I remember this line. I said, "Karma's a bitch, but I wifed that hoe. Freaky deaky fucking bite that hoe." Right? Meaning like, hey, like karma in this life is a bitch, but I'm gonna just bite it and just like take control over it as much as I can, you know? And so, yeah, life will constantly kick you in the balls, and you just have to just take a deep breath and try to ride that pain out.
Yeah.
And try to not get kicked again.
So one of my last questions here, I've been asking all of my entrepreneurial-minded guests this question. In the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see yourself? What are your goals? What do you want to be doing?
So the 5 and the 10 is a little bit different. So
Yeah.
roughly in my 5,
break it down.
Yeah, roughly in my 5, by the end of 5, I want to be fully 100% lifestyle funded from my business. Okay, so smidge off topic, but right now I'm approximately 30% funded off of my business. The rest of that I do Grubhub and Uber Eats and Walmart Spark Delivery and stuff like that. But I'm slowly but surely just chipping away at my drive time and staying more at home working on my stuff. But in 5 years, I want to be 100% funded. And I want to be making bare minimum $100,000 a year off of it. Okay. That's me doubling my income what I'm basically getting now. And that's me working 100% for myself. And then I don't want to be, grinding at it 7 days a week like I am now. I want to be, 4 or 5 days a week, roughly. That's my 5-year plan. And the type of my business could change. It could be very diverse by then. It could be something different, but bare minimum, I want to be in 5 years, at least $100,000 a year, working 4 to 5 days a week, 100% for myself and my clients and stuff, obviously. But it's where I want to be for that. And then the 10-year mark is I want to have that damn greenhouse complex.
There you go.
That's my 10-year mark. So, I mean, between now and 10 years, I got to make more than $100,000 a year to be able to afford something like that. But I want to keep working and building and grinding to get and diversify my sources of income and my different things. I always have other ideas of other businesses that I could start that could kind of run on their own. I can kind of oversee like a day or two a week type of thing and kind of get it up and running, do stuff like that. But yeah, 10 years, I want to have that greenhouse complex.
Yeah. One thing that I haven't focused on until really recently learning about it is, for individuals, we have a credit score, how we take out loans and all of that, which affects what we can borrow. With the businesses, you have a Paydex score, and that Paydex score determines, the business getting money loaned to it. And getting money loaned to a business versus getting money loaned to an individual, you can get a lot more money loaned at much lower rates to a business than as an individual. So the reason I'm saying this, a greenhouse, that goal in 10 years, and that's 10 years away, but knowing that now, you can start to set things up as you work towards that. If it's starting other businesses or whatever, with keeping in mind that you have that goal. So you are going to need to, build up your Paydex in order to fund it. But or go out and crowdfund it. You could do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like my goal to work up to that, like obviously I am starting to learn about business funding as well too. Right now, I don't know that much, but I'm working on learning some of it. But my goal is to, so like I own my house right now. Well, technically the bank does, but there's that. But I want to buy a larger property even further away from people, because as much as I like interacting with people, I don't like being around them. And so I want to have like a compound essentially. And then at that place, I'm going to build essentially a prototype, a smaller scale version of my system, get it all up in place. And then that way I have the working system as a prototype essentially, and then scale from there for funding and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely business credit. And then there's so many benefits to owning a business and running things through a business that you can't do working a W-2 job. Like, no, it's insane. I mean, like, the difference between being a single guy, not married, no kids, and doing your taxes and just getting raped, and having, a couple of kids and being married and getting all this stuff back. That's nothing compared to the difference between working a W-2 job and having an established business when it comes to the tax breaks, the write-offs, the lines of credit, like you just said, and everything like that. And then the fact that when you run a LLC, limited liability corporation, if you get sued, that entity gets sued. You can file bankruptcy, shut that down, start a new one tomorrow, technically, right? Yeah. And so it's like,
and also you could start a holding LLC in Wyoming, and have another LLC in your home state tied to that with a registered agent in Wyoming, and nobody can even tell that you own that LLC.
Nope, nobody can tell. And that's the thing too. So like, I technically have one. So there's another thing too, is like the DBA, doing business as. That's something that I've learned about here recently as well too, because I have Apex Music System LLC, which is my company, but then I also have a DBA for Makin Cents Podcast LLC. So then that way you can separate and segregate the stuff. So if, for instance, Makin Cents Podcast gets a lawsuit or something kind of liability or whatever, maybe runs up some debt, and for whatever reason I fail and I can't do it, I can close that down and still have an Apex Music System LLC. You know what I'm saying? Or I can start a whole nother LLC, which I thought about doing for Makin Cents, but I just, I start a whole nother LLC for, Green Gardens LLC or whatever, right? I want to do something over there. I want to do something in cars or whatever, start another LLC. And like what you said, you can diversify, and nobody really, they have to dig in to like the financials, like the federal registry with the LLC, the state registry with the LLC. I mean,
yeah, but like Joe Schmo searching on the internet to try to find who owns it, they got a chance.
No, they're gonna have to go through the Department of Commerce. Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, I mean, great discussion here. Obviously, we're talking way over our heads, so there's probably somebody listening who's does this for a living, who's an accountant or
accountants run the world. All right, accountants really run the world. So shout out to all of y'all, 100%. If anybody wants to work pro bono, let me know. So and let Matt know, or John too. I'm sure he was going to want to know that. I keep wanting to call you Matt because Matt's in your last name.
Dude, people, I don't know. Yeah, people always do that. It's my whole life. People have called me Matt. I'm like, who the heck would name their kid Matt Odermatt?
Are you maybe? You name one of your kids? No. You have another kid named Matt?
No, I wouldn't do that. But we're almost out of time here. I was saying we'll go 40 minutes. We've got an hour, so that's
like I said, I cannot shut up sometimes. But what I would say to anybody, because this show, from what you've told me, is about, like what you said on the Weathered Soul, is about you documenting your journey in going.
That's really my other show, Pursuit of Freedom.
Okay.
Is documenting that journey, which I've done a poor job of that recently. I haven't released an episode of that in like 2 weeks.
It's tough sometimes.
It is tough. It is tough. This show, Finding Freedom, this has been around with this name since 2021. Prior to that, of course, it was Felony Friday. But yeah, this show is about, giving people like yourself, now I'm focusing almost entirely on entrepreneurs and, creative people, to give you a platform to share what you're doing. So that's what this show is all about.
Right. Well, I guess that's what kind of was meaning is that this show is more geared to people who want to learn from other people,
Right.
kind of getting the game rolling. What I would say is, you know, you're going to have a catalyst. You may have already had it. You may not have. You may have ignored them, but you're eventually going to hit that point where it's make or break, and you're going to have to decide, okay, not quit my job tomorrow, have nothing in savings and start a business, nothing like that. But you're going to have to be like, okay, I'm going to start cutting out all the extras. Okay, I'm a single guy, right? I've pretty much cut out dating. Okay, even just fucking around, honestly, to be honest. And just because I just focus all the time, between my kids and my business that I'm trying to get, I'm just like, no, just focus, right? And sometimes you're gonna have to cut out stuff like that. And I heard Joe Rogan had a guy named Jay Prince on, and Jay Prince started he started a record label down in Texas. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but he had a business partner who was very, very good at what he did, but he had a woman vice. Women were his biggest crush. He was always wanting to go out to the clubs every weekend, different women, all that stuff. And Jay Prince told me, he's like, hey man, if we're gonna make this, you got to stop partying and women for at least 1 year so we can focus on this. And he did, and that label became very successful. And then after the year, the guy kind of went back to it, but not so much. But they became really successful, and I really took that, and I'm like, okay, so kind of have women vice, but not really a partying vice or nothing like that. But like, cut out some of my bullshit and really focus. And that's when you hit that point. Every single one of y'all listening right now, you're gonna hit that point. You may already have. When you hit that, you got to make that decision, and you got to cut out some of the nonsense. You got to shed that dead weight to go faster. And so that's what I would encourage every single one of y'all to do is just think, have I already hit it? Did I ignore it? Or do I want to get ahead of it? And try to just be like, okay, let me, like John said at the beginning, that one thing. That one thing. Let me just start. Let me file my LLC. Here in Indiana, it's only $100. Every state's different. Let me file my LLC real quick. Okay. And if I end up changing the name of it later, screw it, whatever. It was $100. Over the course of a year, you're going to spend $100 on nonsense.
You spend $100 going out to dinner on the weekend.
Yeah. Over the course of a year. Come on now. Right. But like, do that one thing. Start that LLC real quick. And then go to your local small business administration. They usually have some satellites. Like here in Indiana, they have the Indiana Small Business Development Center. Go to any of those. They're 501c3. Every SBA has something locally like that. Go there and say, hey, I'm interested in starting my business. And they'll give you just the basic stuff. Here's how to write a business plan. Here's how to file your, this or whatever. They'll give you the basics. And a lot of times those people don't know much, but here's a form, right? But do those one things. And those one things will add up. It's a chess game of inches. Okay. You got to just take that step.
Yeah. You got to take the step. And before you know it, you'll take 20 steps and look back and not even recognize how you got to where you are.
You won't even recognize yourself.
Yeah.
I don't recognize 2016 me, let alone 2008 me, So absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, not to keep like preaching to the people, but I feel like we're on a roll here. Life is going to change you no matter what. So you are going to be affected and influenced and changed by something, either a job, a relationship, whatever you're spending your time on is going to affect you. So right now, whichever path the listeners of this show are going down, that is molding you into the person who you are, who you're surrounding yourself with. If you're happy with that, good. Keep going that way. If you're not, then do the one thing. Do the one thing to step out and set a different path.
Absolutely.
Harkos, this has been an awesome conversation. I feel like I'm learning here too. So that's always the best kind of interview. I want to give you an opportunity here again to plug away, tell the people where they can find everything you got.
Yeah, so you can find me Makin Cents Podcast, musicmakincentspod.com. And that's spelled a little slangy, right? So it's making without the G, right? So making without the G, and then it's cents as in money, right? So musicmakincentspod.com. I'm sure John will have it down in the description. That's where you can find everything about me. You can find links to all the social streaming, everything like that for the podcast. I have I release one podcast episode every week on Mondays. I've been getting really good at grinding down on that. For a little bit I was a little wishy-washy, but and it's all about a specific topic within the realm of music marketing. And even if you're just interested in marketing, you might be able to learn a lot of stuff too, because I just talk about a lot of basic marketing stuff, but I word it in speaking to a musician. And then on Wednesday nights, I have a live stream on my YouTube where I play music from all genres. I find people all over the place. They submit music. I play it. I review their music, say, hey, I like it. Hey, I don't like it. People in the comments can weigh in as well too. And then I do a little bit of like a social media audit on them as well too while I'm right there. And that's only when they first submit. After they've been coming back, keep on dropping music. I don't do a social media audit every time. But yeah, it's all about helping people grow and giving people exposure. So if you like music of all genres, then come on in, check out. It's called WTF Wednesdays on
Awesome.
Music Makin Cents Podcast website, or not website, YouTube. And it's 9 till approximately 12 p.m. every single Wednesday night Eastern time. Replay is always available as well too, so go check it out. And yeah, Music Makin Cents Pod for everything. If you want to contact me about anything, as you heard, I even edit podcasts and stuff like that as well too. So if you have a podcast but you don't know how to do all the editing and the uploading and all that stuff, I can help you out with a lot of different things. Like I was just saying, I've learned a lot of skills trying to make something out of nothing for free 99 by YouTube videos and everything like that. And so I can help speed that process up for you. And like, so where you're not dude, while I was learning how to edit videos, I was using a office desktop computer, which was not made for editing videos. So it was lagging super slow, right? Every time I made some movements, it would
Dude, that's the worst.
It would take a little bit to refresh, right? I was doing this while I was a manager at Vitamin Shop. And this is like right as soon as I got started with the podcast, 2016, 2017, right after 2017. And I remember the person I was with at that time, she would work nights. She would get home around like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. She would come home. I'd be asleep on my desk, like with my head on my desk in the middle of editing a video, like as I was teaching myself. So I can save you a lot of sleeping on your desk time. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, musicmakinsensepod.com to reach me in any way. That's the best place to find me.
All right. Harkos, thanks for coming to the show, man.
I appreciate the opportunity, man. Absolutely.
All right. We'll see you, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap for today's show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will link to everything that Harkos talked about on the show notes page at lionsofliberty.com. If you like this show, if you like Brian's show on Wednesdays, Me and Age Daydream, if you like the show we do on Fridays, Meme Wars, then you probably maybe want some more Lions of Liberty content. You can get that by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride, by going to Patreon or Locals. And if you sign up there, you get access to some of our bonus shows, one of them being Degenerate Gamblers, another one being Conspiracy Corner. On the last we changed the name, not Conspiracy Corner anymore. Secrets, Lies, and Cover-Ups. On the last bonus Secret, Lies, and Cover-Ups, we talked about the Netflix documentary called The Octopus Murders, which is a crazy four-part docuseries on Netflix, diving into all kinds of political conspiracies going over many decades and murders associated with them as well. But you can hear us dissect it in a very confusing way, in a funny way, by joining our Lions of Liberty Pride on Patreon or on Locals. That is all I have for today. I will see you all next week with another awesome guest. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.